Welcome, everyone. You are so very welcome here this afternoon to this fabulous venue to help us celebrate the 12th Winter Warmer Festival. How lucky are we to be here at the Southword issue 47 launch. So I am not going to go on very long, but I'm hoping that Patrick Cotter, who's the director of the Munster Literature Centre, will come up and say a few words before we get started.
So we're up to issue 47. I took over from issue number 3. And it's been a very rewarding journey. I can remember back to the 80s and 90s when you could draw a line from Galway through to Dublin and there were no literary journals in existence south of that line in the country. And we've got to the stage now where Dublin people are complaining that Cork people are getting too much of a look in what happens down here. But that's what we had to endure all the time back in the 80s and 90s. Outside Dublin, the country hardly existed. And I'm reliably informed that the Belfast people still have that attitude today. Outside Belfast, there's nothing in Ireland happening on the poetry front. So, well, I'm amazed to see how we have, between the last 2 issues, 15 poets that are Cork-based, and they're not the only Cork-based poets working and writing in the city. I remember when you could count the number of poets working, writing and publishing in the city on 2 hands, and still had fingers left over. So it's great to see this level of activity. I'm looking forward now to hearing each of the poets share their Southword poem. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Patrick. And first up, to kick off the launch, please help me welcome Stephen Beechnor.
Hello. Thanks to Paul Casey and Patrick Cotter for organising this, and to Pat for publishing the first poem I'll read in Southword. This poem is about my grandmother, my father's mother. My paternal grandparents grew up within a few streets of one another on the north side of the river. And this is a poem about her as a very young girl. It begins with an epigraph, a quote from a book called Flora Hibernica, which is edited by Valerie Hall and Jonathan Pilcher. And it reads, "The large body of the bog is more dead than living, and within the waterlogged corpse lies the history of the bog, its surroundings, and the very climate. Night lights from the grove of the brothers. Across the drained bog, where contractors had their silage baled before the weather turned, porch lights glimmer through a thick wet night, like my grandmother's city bedroom shrine. Her votive candles long doused by the time an uncle tells me how at 13 years she was stood outside with her mother, her sisters, in nightclothes. There were 3 brothers away on the cattle boat as riflemen searched their house on Blarney Street. For nothing, just to make a hames of their sleep. Such salaried men had that night, or another, shot and left her neighbour bleed out by the college, where decades later, my father as a boy used to pick gooseberries for the brothers, like he says, for pennies and a bit of fruit. Our headmaster Holman asked us not to make of history a reason for hate, but learn some. Sound advice compared to that careful ignorance in the day's op-ed for Northern Truth Commissions. To forgive families ought now to forget the law. Are they going to leave those porch lights on all night? Under the rain's soft, dark commotion, the standing water candles on the bog's archive as I wonder her feet. What shoes had she on outside? Each cell in me that belongs to her, simmer. And the second and last poem is about a fling between a man and a woman, which I suppose could be described as a short-lived species of something higher. It's called Maluada. You aren't going back on what was said, but maybe one last time, you say, pointing towards the carpet. After, as you read in bed with earplugs, in case the soughing of the trees between your balcony and the stone chapel woke you, we remain in touch. A foot, a fondle. You stroke me towards the dirty, tender change of what sounds through you. Give this gift of the body that spends and is received as it is given, yet must be taken back. Lift from me all cause not worth the candle during the calm after Christmas, as we move what sounds through one another, and the trees keen behind curtains by the stone church of Maluada. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Next up, please welcome Owen Cahill.
Thank you. Hey everyone, thanks to Patrick for the invite and to Paul as well for the festival and for everything you do for Cork Poetry and Writing. This first poem was published in issue 46, Landings. There is a moment just before the wheels of a plane hit the tarmac. After you brace, plant your feet, sit up straight, then a stillness, like a collective breath held. Newark, Alghero, John Lennon, Heathrow. Newark, from there to Manhattan, where I walk the skyline, arrive at an alien structure rising out of the ground. It's called a vessel, a honeycomb-like spiral of 154 interconnected flights of stairs, 2,500 steps, 80 landings. But it's closed for a second time, maybe for good. 3 suicides in a year, reopened with safeguards, a buddy system, extra staff, signs, then a 14-year-old boy jumped while with his family. How suicides at a top New York attraction may change what we'll do for a view. We are a little disappointed. We were looking forward to the view, says a tourist, holding a camera, surrounded by his wife and 3 kids. When the architects and engineers sat down to draw their models, did they look at the sketches and think, let's lower your barriers here, show more of that bronze skin, fabricated copper shipped from Venice for its mirror-like surface that will show every blemish? When they test these structures, do they factor in the loads that people carry up and down these steps? Can they calculate the point at which that weight becomes greater than the sum of all the pain they will leave behind, plus the fear of the fall, plus the pain of the landing? When the billionaires and their architects and engineers sit down, they do not plan for ugliness, and they don't know how to speak with it, so they shut it down. We are left with an object only to be looked at and a void at the centre. Thank you. Thanks. The second poem is a love poem. I feel I need to clarify that. My wife doesn't really agree, but I'll let you be the judge. And there you were. You were working as a waitress at a hotel in Euro Disney when 8 of us came to visit. We watched France beat Brazil in the World Cup final at a bar in the airport the night before. Oh, phenomenal, original Ronaldo, head bowed, shoulders slumped as if suffering power failure. Not the electric artist whose work I'd pored over for the previous month. Hypnotic step over his magnetic control, bursts that took him away from everyone else. We tried to sleep on airport seats before the early flight, but the fucking security guard kept poking at us to get up. 1 million people brought together on the Champs-Élysées by a team that looked like them. Basques, Armenians, Senegalese, Algerians. You and Cara booked us a single room, 7 lads and poor Liz, which soon had a false floor of empty Kronenberg bottles. The CD player had Bob Marley on repeat, every day and every night. After a party in your apartment, we walked the 3 miles back across hayfields, pants tucked in socks, the floodlit Sleeping Beauty Castle, our North Star. I was working at a scaffolding yard for the summer, just me in the corner of a warehouse organising large steel poles with shit daytime radio played over a crackling tannoy. The morning after the nightclub near the Moulin Rouge, I woke without a passport. You said you'd come with me, with your almost fluent French, to the club, the police station, the embassy. I stood behind your shoulder, innocent and mute, as you boldly took on my case. And there you were, sitting opposite me on the metro back, talking as you gazed out the window and the Parisian suburbs flew by. Later I would insist we be together, with a roof right over our heads, but for now it was just the tiny string you had pulled on a slim light bulb, stuck to a wall in one chamber of my heart. And anyway, you were with Cyril, who was older and French and could mimic birdsong flawlessly. I went back to my job in the scaffolding yard, where I got the chance to get out with a crew, with some of those steel poles to use. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Owen. Next up to read, we have Ben Donnellian.
Thank you very much. Just a quick thank you to everybody here from the team at O'Vale and from the Munster Literature Centre for having us. It is such an amazing event every year, and I'm delighted to be speaking at it this time. I just have the one poem for you today. It's written for my father in memory of his late mother, and it's called The Gardener's Friend. It's January, and he's flitting between the root trunks of the tree ferns in our garden. His detective's eye carefully considering the silvered spines of last year's fronds, their broad leaves worn by winter, their feathered edges bronzed and bitten, brownish and brittle, like tarnished blades. He cuts them at the base of the stem, lets the fan-like foliage flit to the earth, whirling in the midwinter winds. Some russet insulation for the nest he'll share with his friend. My father's robin redbreast, perched on the ivy-smothered wall, stewards his preparations, its little russet head tilted as it eyes his every move. A vigilant foreman, diligent and discerning, only the best of his cuttings will do. We inherited the bird in my grandmother's passing, and I think sometimes that's who he sees too. When it comes whirring round his ankles in the garden, winging between each shovel stroke and singing as it had for her God on the cross, when its red breast was bloodied and consecrated, my father's bird stained with her sacred heart. And though my own faith died some years ago, I too find a comfort in the bird, not in its song, but in its labour, where I see my Father's work. The straight line flight between the tree ferns, steady and direct. The deliberate gait along the stepping stones, eyes narrowed and obsessed. And it's not hard for me to imagine him pluck the barbs from a crown of thorns. For his sanctuary is found in his labour, nothing else and nothing more. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ben. Next up to read, we have Dara Fleming.
Hello. Delighted to be here. So thanks, Patrick, for inviting me, and thanks, Ovale, for the festival. It really is a special time of year. So I'm just going to read one poem, the context of which is my brother and his wife bought a house 3 years ago, and this poem was kind of me trying to figure out what the hell happened that night in the aftermath, when there was no furniture in the house, but there was several bottles of whiskey, and this is that poem. This is called With a Gin and Tonic in the Kitchen. Jenny with a gin and tonic in the kitchen. On the kitchen counter sits a bottle of throaty whiskey looking out across its kingdom. Killian puts a finger of it in a tumbler, slides it down the table to his brother, who is already mumbling. This night is pretty much the same as every other one, but is also somehow different. Ginny with a gin and kitchen in the tonic. On the whiskey sits the counter's kitchen looking out across its throaty kingdom. Tumbler puts Killian in a finger, mumbles it down his brother, who tables it already. This one is pretty and much different to every other night, but also somehow the same. Tonic with a kitchen and a gin inside a Jenny's gullet. His brother slides the table by the throat counter through the whiskey all on Killian's finger. What was that? He mumbled from the kitchen kingdom. The night is not the night, but is the same and also different to every other night that came into existence. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dara. Next up, we have Jennifer Horgan.
Thank you to Patrick and to Paul. I'm delighted to be here. I left out a yelp when I got the acceptance in the staff room at school. And this poem is about school. I write for the newspaper on education quite often, and I hear stories of parents turning up to secondary schools and primary schools looking for a place, and their children having additional needs, and they're often told to go elsewhere. So this is actually a poem of an overheard conversation. Private school enrolment, Cork. They would have received it in plenty of time, if not for the storm affecting Post, flooding the low-lying parts of Cork beyond the city. High on a hill on the south side, their place stayed dry, but they felt a similar, rising panic to their rural neighbours when friends texted to say their boys were in. No such relief for them. They were fortunate to know someone, thank God, their call jolting him from day naps and nightcaps on his annual retirement holiday in Antigua. Then came the return call from the principal, like a boomerang, making assurances. The letter was sent after all. A laugh in the end, but no harm to mark his card, said a friend, unaware of the boy who can't spell, who took the suggestion of a more suitable school well, knowing exactly what was meant by the word, having learned by the age of 12 to accept it.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Next up, let's welcome Mona Lynch to read.
I too would like to thank Paul Casey for setting up this wonderful event and Pat Cotter for his ongoing support, keeping poets like me encouraged to keep going. I've been so fortunate to have the wonderful Tom McCarthy as my mentor. Therefore, I'm just about to send my first collection out into the world, so wish me luck. It'll be called Daily Rituals, and from that I'm Southword, published in Southword, I'm reading Sabbath Ritual. I had a father, but was sometimes fatherless, his nurturing diverted to his white-collared friend in a pint glass. Saturday nights spent drowning demons, horrors of war, survivor's guilt. Nevertheless, he rose early on Sunday morning to attend Mass, mingle with neighbours, dance the dance. He began his ritual with shoe polishing. Then, taking his cutthroat razor from his wooden case, he tugged the strap dangling from his hoop by the window. With controlled rhythm, he'd stroke the razor up, tilt it on the way down, using the ball of his thumb to check, a satisfied surgeon. Placing it on the rigid wooden draining board, he'd fill the rotund Toby mug with water, hot from the kettle on the hob, lather the badger-haired brush on the lump of Lifebuoy soap. Candy floss jowls sagged under shaggy brows. Grin, scrape, round the bends, skim the slopes. An equine toss in an avalanche of water. Job done. His youngest, his old Segotia, I'd approach, eager to see the finished job. Watch the light caress his face, showing divots stuffed with blood-stained paper, testament to a shaky hand. As the collection is called Rituals, I said I'd read another daily ritual. Every day, my mother made a wheel of soda bread, 1 foot round, deep crossed. While it cooled on the windowsill, she climbed the cobbles to the sound of the Angelus bell from the church on the hill, to be enfolded in a cloak of incense, lulled by the tinkling of the thurible. She was playing 45 in Christie's Hotel the night the ambulance took her. She played a trump card and collapsed. Later, when I visited, she told me she promised the Sacred Heart she would give up the fags if he gave her another chance. But how do I make the soda bread, I asked. A fist of brown, a fist of white, a pinch of soda, a pinch of salt, sour milk to mix, she rhymed. I mixed, I stirred, even the dog declined, for I never felt the weight of her fist or the size of her pinch. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mona. Next up to read, we have John Mee.
So it's great to be here with all of you, and thanks to Pat and to Paul. Cork burned down in 1621, and this was portended a few months before by an unnatural battle in the skies above the city involving thousands of starlings, and contemporary pamphlets interpreted this as some kind of warning, and then after the actual fire as a punishment. So this poem alternates voices from that event and from the more famous burning of Cork in 1920 by Crown forces. The burning of Cork. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were not more suddenly and horribly consumed with fire from heaven than was the city of Cork this last of May. My head was full of dying starlings. I looked up from my desk to see a unionist of my acquaintance. He said, "There'll be bad work tonight after what happened on the hill. Get home." The stairs, or starlings, mustered in prodigious numbers 4 or 5 days before their battles, every day increasing their armies with greater supplies. The stairs of the east sought their meat in the east, as the stairs of the west did the like westward. But I passed the night in the flat of the city to watch it happen again. Sundry flights of stairs, some 20 or 30 in a company, would come from one side to the other, employed, it would seem, in embassies that came to nothing. Cook, Mailer, Winthrop, Pembroke, street names my mother taught me, old sheriffs and mayors, our dead masters. The day being very fair and sunshine day, the stairs took wing, and so mounting up into the skies, encountered one another with such a terrible shock as carried across the whole city. There fell down into the rivers multitudes of stairs, some with their wings broken, some with their eyes plucked out, some with their bills thrust into the breasts and sides of their adversaries. What was her sin that Cork had to burn? Lust in this plain city? At noon, the clouds over the city began to gather thick, which caused such a darkness in their houses that they were amazed. These dark clouds seemed to descend by degree closer to the city. One shouted from the lorry as they reached the Munster Arcade, "That's the stuff to give them, pour it on." At the same instant, they saw dreadful lightning, with flames of fire breaking out of the clouds and falling upon the city. At the very place where the stairs began their cruel and clamorous battle, not a 6 months before, and where they first fell down, being killed in the fight, there the fire took hold. From the quay, I watched the library burn. The flames were taking the old books and their prophecies. The soldiers kept turning off the water and cutting the hoses. And many were consumed which ventured too near to save their goods, their wives or children. And an auxiliary in a tam o' shanter cap, falling drunk, fired a shot from a revolver into Cash's. "Still burning," he said. Now concerning those who, to save their lives, fled into the islands and marshes adjoining, in what a miserable affliction were they, turning their eyes this way and that way, where sometimes their habitations were. He said, "I must burn now, clear out." I said, "Must you?" He said, "Yes, I've got to burn now." The inhabitants of the west and lower side of the city began hastily to run towards the east part where the fire began. They were not run half the way when, as they heard a woeful cry of fire behind them, for the west part was also set on fire. Below the burning streets, the buried channels of the river, They told me to sing God Save the King. They said I would be shot this way or that. I said no. Upon every glimpse of the fire, the cry was raised, the church is now on fire. Now we all shall be consumed. For the fire that falleth from heaven is unquenchable, and rageth with the violent heat, as may not be endured. They put dark masks on, covering the upper portions of their faces, with openings for the eyes. The tall one said, "It's our turn now." At this last battle, there was a kite, a raven, and a crow. All three found dead in the streets, rent, torn, and mangled. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. Next up to read, we have Martin McCarthy.
I wrote this poem last year for the 10th anniversary of Seamus Heaney's death. I sent it to his wife, Marie, and she liked it, and she sent me a Christmas card. So I was encouraged, and I sent it to Pat, and here I am. This is called Aeneas Departs for Seamus Heaney. Don't be afraid, you wrote, just minutes before your death. And why should you? Why should you, of all people, or artful Aeneas, be afraid to die, or fear death in any way? You who had but lately visited the blessed grove to seek your father's ghost among the shades who await us there, and thus knew death is not the end, but merely a pathway back to the beginning, back to Virgil's starlit sky, or to a fluorescent flower-strewn room of births and deaths, not so different from the one you occupied, when that small host of earthly angels gathered with anxious awe around you to witness your last encouraging words to Marie in ancient Latin, Noli Timere. That's it.
Thanks so much, Martin. Next up, let's welcome Bernadette McCarthy to read.
Thanks to Pat and to Paul and the O'Vale. So my poem appears in issue 46 of Southword, and the note underneath reads, on April 26, 1922, 4 British soldiers and a Newfoundland dog were picked up by the IRA in Macroom, taken to Kilgovna, shot and buried in a bog. It wasn't long after the end of the War of Independence when these soldiers turned up in the town with an absurdly large dog, and when detained they claimed they were only on a fishing trip, but that didn't work out well for them. It did turn out afterwards they probably had been spies. A Newfoundland takes an ill-advised trip to Macroom, 1922. The 5 of us lingered too long in Dick's hotel over whiskey and water. 3 officers, the driver and myself, slumped in the musk of those who had left the bar, of horse blood flowing from the knackery upstream. I heard them first, urgings in the square, and then, above the hot screech of the mart, I smelt them, Woodbine's apricot duck shit, and the electric fear of my master. I barked at the glinting barrels till he bade me, be quiet. Saw the lump rise in its throat like a woodcock. The strangers saw too, collars bristling on their necks. I could have taken them. On the drive west, braced together in the truck, I pressed my snout against his Burberry coat, smelt cut bluebells from without, laughing girls, a rotting badger in a ditch. And my last poem, I thought it's just one I finished recently that I thought was very appropriate due to its setting. I was trapped in the Presentation Convent grounds with a Cork poet, the 10-foot gates in a perpetual state of being locked. Would we need to wait till dawn trickled into the cloister belly before our exit? She fretted for her children. I wished I'd had more champagne, felt sorry for my terrier. But we were sisters now and must walk the walls along wide avenues to search for a gap in the smashed glass that lined the coping. As pilgrims, we processed past the graveyard, exalting the blowsy magnolia with flaky lips. So many decaying nuns lined up, like buns in a bakery. Yet somehow each wooden cross seemed alone, as a breath taken under a wimple. We came upon Nan O'Nagel in her concrete-rendered shrine, touched her through the aperture gently. Sure, she's just a child in an incubator. I could have stayed breathing the humid air till dawn, but a friend rang back with the code, and the gates released us onto the insomniac street. Night, night, she called, sidestepping a rosary of puke. Hurrying back to my car through the mess of lanes, I understood why a woman might want to live behind prayers, pebble-dashed grottos and expected flowers. Something potent in every prayer or condemnation from the apple-pudding mouths, and the days and nights sure as moss developing in rainwater goods. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Bernadette. And next up to read, we have Afric McGlinchey.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks so much to Paul and to Pat. We're all so lucky and are in Cork to have two such champions of poets and writers. So I have two poems. The first comes from the 43rd, issue number 43. So in this poem, I'm writing about my daughter who's pregnant. She's about to have her baby. She's in Zimbabwe and I'm about to fly over there for the birth. One thing that's more terrifying than having your own child is anticipating your child having to go through the same thing. The other thing I'm thinking about is her two rescue dogs, Rafa and Teddy. She was so in love with her dogs, she was terrified that she wouldn't be able to love her baby as much as she loved them. That was her big fear. So this is called Waiting for the Baby. And I use the second pronoun to refer to myself in this poem. You're standing on sharp shingle, littered with ashy, upside-down feathers and plucks of blonde marram, which is why one boot has picked up something foreign, which is why you crunch when you run. Your hands are conducting an arc with a stick like the parabola of a flight through time to the day after tomorrow's Teddy and Raf, who'll gaze obligingly upwards as you play Maybe I'll Throw, a song they know well, and the younger one yelps the refrain. While apprehension flutters around your nightly non-sleeps like a blue bottle trying to find somewhere to settle, every day as you look up at the cliff bellying out over the ocean, optimism bursts out of you like a horse from its stall. Thank you. My second poem is for my mother. When she was about my age, she started having a series of mini strokes that went unrecognized with awful consequences. So there's an epigraph. It's called Going Silent. And the epigraph is a huge mountain between my heart and tongue, Shakespeare. And so it is, having slain apparitions before, she thinks she sees that the moon is in now time. She polishes the house with her gaze. What she remembers, if she remembers, is as clear as if she could be any age. When she finally shows him, he touches his own lips to taste her fear. He practices holding her face to get her to speak. Christ, say a word. She tears through the door to stand out under the heavens. What she hears in the memory is advice to spend time in the garden. Subatomic particles, strike a spade into earth and listen. what she remembers. She once took a boy's tongue for a kiss. Subatomic particles sounding a law of bells. She nurses her knuckles with teeth, vanishes underground again. What she remembers, as clear as blood, is those weather-red lips saying her name. How she lay on the back of his horse, and stars tilted as far as the grass. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Afrik. And next up to read, we have Niamh O'Connell.
Fantastic, yeah, right, thank you. The one poem that I'm going to read to you today is from issue 47, and it is a response. It is a response to Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She wrote a series of sonnets from the Portuguese, translations disguised. Anyways, my response is to sonnet 43, but you will know it as How Do I Love Thee? My response is kind of focusing on a strong feeling, on what it feels like the strong as that. So, how do I hate you? Let me count the ways. I hate you to the infinite unknown extent of the abyss. I'm only ever content to imagine your downfalls and disgrace. I hate you to the height of a midnight craze bolstering the full blood moon's ascent. I hate you truly as global warming won't relent. I hate you wholly with the king's rage atop his days. I hate you with a passion making me blind to kindness and with the chaos of Seth. I hate you with the hate so rare to find in life. I hate you with the shibboleth of fascists, dictators and fascists, yet feeling kind. I shall but hate you lesser after death. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kerry. And next up, I'm going to read a poem. My name is Lauren O'Donovan, and although it would be a really fun plot twist, and we'd all get a good gossip about it later, I'm not actually an MC gone mad, drunk on the glory of somebody else's launch, but indeed I am very fortunate to have a poem in Southword 47 as well. It was actually my first acceptance that I got this year, and it really meant a lot. So thank you very much to the Munster Literature Centre. More. Okay. Sorry. I joke when I'm nervous, you might be able to tell. October. Just like that, the set changes. A tunnel of blazing orange, the colour of death for leaves. I dodge dissolving dog litter, hopping towards the bird feeder, while starlings and sparrows glare at me from oak trees, waiting for fat balls like they wait for the blackberry to blister up from small white flowers. Like they wait on spring eggs, knowing, and yet how can anyone know what will come after a crack and the arrival of another wet, hungry beak. I watch a video where a fledgling magpie holds open its mouth, aimed at a caterpillar, expecting the fat insect to jump inside, confused by diligent parents doing everything. A greenfinch lands in the garden, quick as a kickboxer, whips a foot up to a dandelion's neck, pins it to the ground, stabs it with a beak. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. The small girl brings home a paper ghost with tissue trails and worries that his face is too sweet, his tongue too cheeky. I hesitate for weeks, delaying the first press of the heating switch, worried someone stole the oil when the summer wasn't looking. Swallows fly home overhead in shifting alphabets, writing lines of poetry on the sky. Thank you so much. And next up to read, let's welcome Kerry Sonnenberg.
Thanks. Thank you. And thanks, Pat and Paul, for the work you do to make a community for poetry in Cork. And thank you for making me part of that community. I'll read two short poems, and the first one appears in the latest issue of Southword. It's called Willem in the Shadow of St. Francis Church. It's after Jerry Murphy, and the way that it's after Jerry Murphy is some of the words in the poem were taken from one of his poems, but they're in a very different order, and this was done with his blessing, and in fact at his provocation. Willem in the Shadow of St. Francis Church. Would you not notice every time you pass through Saoirse Street the space of a statue in its niche, ill at ease, how it might in stone levitate, fill your curved view? How can you expect nothing from something so devoted to stillness? Thank you. So the second poem is called Render Distance. Ruling out history as a potential pursuit, your scar denotes an 8-bit gash in the universe. You played through the partial and deleted realm, articulate, bridge word, liable to cocoon. Leaving the soft, untrustable interiors to their guesswork, and years slalom along. And so you take the buggy caveats as reason to overbuild, to realize your own view through the crosshairs of stars. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kerry. And last up to read, we have Fiona Tracy. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to read my poem from Southword 46, which is called Paper Moon. How long have I been mourning old versions of myself, phases already in the ground? Tracing my face in photographs, missing this roundness, that hollow, marking myself with ink and metal, aching for scars that were mine to choose. How long have I been a foreigner here, marooned in my own body, refusing to call it home? Shapeshift long enough, and you forget your true form. Call yourself luminous, and the world believes it. Thrown out of the underworld, I rise like a weightless lantern, a paper moon. And then I'm going to read one more for you. It's a new poem that I've been working on since the summer, and it's called Faith. I love today, and even more, the unpromised tomorrow. I love faith. I love that faith is something you can choose to have. I love that you can never truly be alone. I love the boy in the coffee shop saying to his mate, "When I die, tell them to play Kate Bush." I love thinking about what happens after death. I love believing that I'll see whoever I want to see. I love thinking about God. I love thinking about what I can do with this life even more. I love the billboard on my walk home that says, "God is knocking on your door and waiting for you to let him in." I love knowing that actually you will have to do the legwork with God. I love the congregants of great age in the Lock Church with their plastic candles. I love real candles even more. I love lighting one even when I'm too broke to pay. I love how quiet people are when they walk into churches. I love the quiet that people can make. I love holding that quiet as long as I can. I love the thoughtful Marys in dusty roadside grottos. I love them even more when they are clumsily painted with poorly mixed colors, and when the stained glass is really peel and stick art. I love that even Jesus dared to be human. I love it when one person in the choir sings loudly out of time, and you get to hear what God would sound like in the shower. I love that you can buy Holy Communion wafers on Amazon, 500 for €3.99. I love God fresh, and I love him prepackaged. I love knowing that Shane McGowan was born at Christmas. I love that when George Michael died at Christmas, my cousin went out, got in a fender bender at the liquor store, made Moscow mules, and we all danced. I love crying at goodbyes because it feels so good to cry. I love the messages that people write in bar bathrooms. I love that in the bathroom at the Oval, someone wrote, "It will be okay" in black Sharpie, and someone else crossed out, "will be," and wrote, "is now." I love walking out after Mass in warm rain, and here we all are together, getting wet. I love it when the old ones wear their plastic bonnets over blue, shellacked, hard hair. I love the babies getting baptized and how it looks like they're in drag. I love that they can still be anything they want. I love that I can be anything I want too. I love saying to you, "I wonder what we'll be when we grow up," and you saying, "We are grown." I love being a believer, and when you ask, "What in?" I love to say, "Everything."
So I'm going to add my thanks. Actually, the next time I'm going to remember to tell people, don't thank me, just read your poem. But anyway, I'm going to thank Paul Casey and O'Dale for hosting us here. I think one of the wonderful things about Cork, and there are other cities in the country that are an example of the direct opposite. But what's great about Cork is how there's a cooperative synergy amongst the literary community here, not just between the Munster Centre and O'Vale, but between us, the library, UCC, the MA course, Howl, and magazines such as Four Face Liar, Swerve, and the County. It's wonderful to see cooperation. We all get on better when we're all working and pulling together. Back in the 1990s, on the two occasions I went to listen to Liam O'Murrough for the first time. There were two of them when I went to listen to him for the first time. And each occasion was years apart. And on each occasion he was paired with another particular poet, whom I won't name because he's infamous enough already, we don't need to shame more. That poet went first and read for so long that there was no time left at the end of the programme for Liam O'Murrough to get up and read, and Liam O'Murrough demurred getting up and read. The tendency to read 30 minutes over your time begins with the tendency to read 2 minutes over your time, 5 minutes over your time. So I really want to congratulate everybody today for being professional enough to read within their allotted time. It's not just professionalism, but consideration for everybody else in the room. And I heartily congratulate you. Thanks very much. Take care.